congressional Republicans to do?
Well, long term, the best thing to do is just quit spending, and that means don't go along with a new program. And I think they're doing the right thing by saying that it's bad economic policy, bad medical policy, bad constitutional policy to introduce a program like Obamacare. And because people suffer so much, I think they should do what they can to prevent this from happening. But if the handwriting is on the wall and they can't achieve that, I would think the most important thing they should do, and maybe concentrated on that from the very beginning, is why in the world can't you have a chance to opt out when the corporations can opt out and government can opt out? That is such a hot political issue. They just should have said, why can't a few people have the right to take care of themselves? I think that's a message that could be sold, but they're all, right now they're all over the place. And at the same time they talk about saving money, they don't really believe that government shouldn't be involved in medicine since the Republicans gave them No Child Left Behind. And they're putting the money back in the budget in the continuing resolution for the military expenditures. So they're not serious. Neither side is serious about cutting back. They're just trying to bamboozle the American people into believing that you have to keep spending forever.
Right. Well, if you had to place the blame, a lot of people want to place it on the Republicans here, but who do you really think is the culprit? Because it seems like there's blame on both sides.
It is, but it's a philosophy of government that you have to blame. You have to blame Keynesianism and militarism and interventionism overseas and the funny money system that we have. All that has come together, and the country's bankrupt, and nobody wants to admit it. And the people, although there's a lot more waking up now, there's still a lot of people out there that have a great appetite for big government, and they're not willing to give up on it. So it's a combination of things, but that's the subject they're not talking about. They think this is all political gamesmanship. Who gets blamed for it? Who's going to get blamed for, shutting down non-essential services as if anybody's going to suffer from it? The market obviously doesn't care about the non-essential staying home. They might have feel like they've gotten a reprieve. They don't have the regulators bearing down on them for a day.
Well, President Obama also weighing in. I want to play a clip of what he said yesterday in a press conference. Let's play that clip and get your reaction on the other side.
One faction of one party in one house of Congress in one branch of government doesn't get to shut down the entire government just to refight the results of an election. Keeping the people's government open is not a concession to me.
Is he right, Dr. Paul? Is a small faction of the government holding up the whole economy here?
Well, it's not the majority, but that has nothing to do with right or wrong. Sometimes the people who are right are in a minority, and they're trying to express themselves and make a point. So just because he might have the momentum on his side, which I don't believe he does, doesn't have anything to do with right or wrong. What about if I'd be standing up against the president and I based it all on moral convictions, on economic principles, and the Constitution? Why would that be wrong? I mean, what right does he have to say that I'm an evil person because I'm standing up on different principles? But they call us rigid, but they're rigid too. They're rigid in that deficits don't matter, and the government has to spend, and the government has to take care of us, and you should print money when you need it. So they're very, very rigid with bad ideas. So it's not so much rigidity in ideas; it's whose ideas are right and who's wrong. I just happen to believe those who have given us the type of government we have today are wrong, and that's why we are facing a major crisis and why we haven't gotten out of a recession and why we fight endless wars. They have to pay attention to the principles and decide who's right and who's wrong.
Well, in that fight between who is right and who's wrong here on all of these issues, how long do you think that this goes on? Does this stretch out to that October 17th deadline, or do you think that we come to a resolution sooner than that? One side will have to give in.
They probably will, but I think it's irrelevant because, look, right now, it's mostly political talk. Everybody who needs something, they can still get it. The non-essential people went home, not the essential people. So all the spying is going to go on. NSA is not going to be laid off. All the bad things they do. The drone operators are going to continue to bomb and kill people. So and the deficit is going to continue. So no, I don't think it matters a whole lot whether it's 5 days or 10 days. The only thing thing that really counts is what the American people think the role of government ought to be, and a belief that the government can take care of us forever and ever with deficits, which I think is absolutely wrong. And it won't be a shutdown of government. It will be a breakdown of the whole system that they ought to be concerned about.
Well, the market seems to be pricing in an earlier deal than waiting till that last-minute deadline. At this point, the markets are holding up. But I want to switch gears for a second, Dr. Paul, and talk about gold. Down 3% today. Why do you think that gold investors are starting to sell on the shutdown?
Well, you mentioned in your report that maybe there was one big dealer that sold a lot. That could explain it. But Austrian economics doesn't teach that you know how to predict short terms. You can predict trends. So if gold started off at $20 an ounce when the Fed took over, we know what the trend was. It went from 20 and on upward. But because it goes up and down, I don't think it's any more erratic than a lot of other markets. You know, stocks that go up and down, but long term, I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever. If you run up debt and you print the money to cover the debt, the value of the dollar will go down and gold will go up, and that's 6,000 years of history has proven that.
Well, it's interesting because we are seeing a weaker dollar today, yet gold has still gone lower. I know you're speaking broader about the long term, but is there any correlation that you can make there? Because usually when we see that impact of the weaker dollar, we see gold tend to rise.
Yeah, I was wondering about that today. I was wondering where the money was going because, when I look, the bonds had, not gone down, but gold and the dollar went down, so where did all the money go? But those short terms, are variables, and I just think I can't tell why things happen from one day to another. Sometimes there are reasons, sometimes they're just excuses, but nevertheless, I look at the fundamentals rather than how the traders operate. But, if a government was involved, all central banks work together, and they collude. And we have the President's Working Group on Financial Markets, and they claim, and I agree with them, they have the right to intervene in gold markets. So if you want to deceive or manipulate markets like they do, especially the gold market. Just look like how long they manipulated the gold market at $35 an ounce. So if they can participate internationally in knocking gold down, that's a temporary benefit to them, but I don't worry about that either because long term the markets will overrule all the central banks of the world anyway.
Finally, Dr. Paul, before I let you go, who do you think has done a worse job handling the economy? Do you think it's Congress, or do you think it's the Fed?
Well, I think they're all the same. They all believe in Keynesian economics. They believe in economic planning, and I think they collude. They're one thing. Congress spends the money, get reelected, fight these wars, run up the debt, and the Fed is always there. Nobody doubts for a minute. If they... Pardon me?
Go ahead, Dr. Paul.
Oh, no, nobody, I'm sorry, I got messed up there when that other voice came in.
That's all right. We were talking about Congress being worse or the Fed being worse, and you seem to think they're both equally as bad.
To me, they're all the same. They're the same people, and they work together, and because it's a philosophy of government. Big government spending doesn't matter. So Keynes is the one that taught us that deficits don't matter, and therefore the Fed has to exist to accommodate the Congress and big government. And it won't be reversed until it's proven wrong, and that means when people reject it, and that's the serious problem, and that's when things break down. And too many countries around the world have done this for many, many years, and I suspect we'll do it to ourselves one day.
If we do default on the debt ceiling, Dr. Paul, how low do you think the market can go?
Well, I don't think they're going to default in the conventional way. They're always going to pay the bills. I mean, we bailed out all the corporations. We bailed out all the banks. We bailed out central banks around the world and governments around the world. So why can't the Fed always pay the bills? Right. They're not going to default in the sense of not making payments. They're going to default only by giving them money that doesn't have purchasing power. So, but the market, just like all markets are unpredictable. But I think the stock market, and measuring the stock, I think it's just looking for tough times ahead. I mean,